In the year 2497, something strange happened in the far reaches of space. For centuries, the different groups and planets that made up the galaxy had been sending messages back and forth without many problems. Ships, space stations, and colonies all talked through a huge network of communication channels. These channels were used for everything, from friendly greetings and trade deals to emergency warnings and important news. Then, suddenly everything went silent. It wasn't just a small problem or a single station going dark. Entire sections of space stopped sending any messages. 12 whole star sectors, huge areas filled with planets, moons, and space travelers, went completely quiet. No one could send or receive any signals. Not one call, not one warning, not one casual chat. Just silence. This silence wasn't just strange. It was terrifying. People everywhere began to wonder what had caused it. Was it a technical failure? Was it sabotage? Maybe a cyber attack? Some even thought it might be the start of a new war, with enemies cutting off communications before striking. For days, the silence stayed. During those days, the galaxy's biggest governments and space agencies worked hard to figure out what was happening. They sent out investigation teams, scanning the darkened sectors with every tool they had. But no signals came back. The silence grew heavier with every passing hour. Then, after nearly a week, something unexpected happened. A small mining colony on a remote planet called Phoros 3 sent a message. It was a short, broken transmission, barely clear enough to understand, but enough to stop everyone in their tracks. "We saw it," the voice said. "A ship, huge. Not from this galaxy. It's coming." The message ended abruptly. No one heard from the colony again. Suddenly, all eyes turned toward Phoros 3. The colony was in chaos. When rescue teams arrived, they found the planet nearly empty. The few survivors were shaken, unable to explain everything they had seen. But they described the ship in haunting detail. It was enormous, bigger than anything anyone had ever seen before. It moved through space with quiet power, and its presence seemed to make the stars themselves go dark. The name people started using for it was simple: the Dreadnought. But no one knew where it came from. It wasn't listed in any galactic registry, nor did it belong to any known fleet or government. The silence that had fallen across those star sectors seemed connected to the appearance of the Dreadnought. Wherever it traveled, all communication stopped. Across the galaxy, people reacted in different ways. Some panicked. They feared this was a weapon sent to wipe out entire civilizations. Others were curious, wanting to learn more about this mysterious ship. Scientists, historians, and even ordinary citizens began searching for answers. Among those experts was Dr. Ilara Venn. Ilara was not a soldier or a politician. She was a historian, someone who studied the past, especially the history of humanity and Earth, the original home of all humans. After Earth's collapse centuries before, many believed that old knowledge was lost forever. But Ilara had spent years piecing together fragments of Earth's history from scattered archives and broken records. When she heard about the Dreadnought and the strange silence it caused, she knew this might be connected to something very old and very important. Her team traveled to Phoros 3 to study the fragments left behind. What they found was shocking. Pieces of metal from the Dreadnought's hull had markings and symbols unlike anything seen in modern space fleets. The designs were familiar to Ilara because she had studied ancient Earth technology, and these fragments matched those designs closely. Even more surprising were the inscriptions carved into the metal. They were written in languages long dead. Some were old Earth languages that had vanished from use thousands of years ago. These inscriptions suggested the ship was built long before most people thought humans could travel so far into space. As Ilara examined the fragments, a new theory began to form. Maybe the Dreadnought wasn't just a forgotten ship lost in time. Maybe it was part of something much bigger, a secret mission launched from Earth itself before its collapse, something meant to protect humanity or keep a promise made long ago. Ilara shared her findings with the Galactic Assembly, the group that governed many planets and systems. But not everyone believed her. Some thought it was impossible that such a ship could exist, or that Earth had made anything so powerful. While the experts argued, the Dreadnought kept moving silently through space. It didn't respond to any attempts to communicate. It simply appeared and disappeared like a shadow. leaving behind a void where stars once shone brightly. The galaxy watched and waited, unsure if this was the beginning of a new war or the discovery of a forgotten legacy. Meanwhile, life went on for most people. Some continued their daily work in the spaceports and colonies, while others prepared for the worst. Stories about the Dreadnought spread quickly, some filled with fear, others with hope. Children whispered about the giant ship in their schools, imagining it as a protector or a destroyer. Adults debated what it meant for the future. One thing was clear: the silence had changed everything. No longer could people take for granted the steady hum of communication across space. The galaxy felt different, darker, quieter, and filled with uncertainty. And in the midst of this silence, the mystery of the unknown human dreadnought hung like a question waiting to be answered. What was its purpose? Who had built it? And most importantly, on what would it do next? The answers for now remained hidden in the silent depths of space. After the strange silence and the mysterious appearance of the huge dreadnought, many people across the galaxy felt uneasy. No one really knew what to think. The ship was huge and silent, and it seemed like it was carrying secrets from a past almost forgotten. The Galactic Assembly wanted answers. They sent their best experts to investigate the pieces of the ship left behind on Foros 3. Among them was Dr. Ilara Venn, a historian who specialized in old Earth history and technology. She wasn't a soldier or a spy. She was someone who believed that understanding the past could help the present, and maybe even the future. When Ilara and her team arrived at the colony, the scene was grim. The mining colony had been mostly destroyed, with signs of a sudden and violent event. The survivors were scared and confused. They told stories about the massive ship that had appeared without warning. They said it was like nothing they had ever seen, with a cold, dark power that made the stars seem to disappear around it. Ilara spent long hours examining the metal fragments found scattered on the planet's surface. These pieces were from the Dreadnought's hull, the outer shell of the ship. What caught her attention immediately was the strange design. The metal wasn't just strong and heavy. It carried symbols and patterns that looked familiar but also very old. She took the fragments to her lab and began analyzing every inch of them. Her team used every tool they had: scanners, chemical tests, and even old Earth archives to compare the metal's makeup and design. What they found was surprising. The metal was made using techniques believed lost to time. Its strength and composition were far beyond what most current ships used. But the real shock came from the markings on the metal. They weren't random. They were inscriptions written in ancient Earth languages that no one used anymore, and that only a few experts like Ilara could still read. Some of the inscriptions were in Latin, some in ancient Chinese characters, and others in long-forgotten codes used by Earth's early space programs. This meant the ship wasn't just old. It was possibly built on Earth, or at least by people connected to Earth a very long time ago. Ilara felt a chill. If this ship had been built so long ago, why was it appearing now? And why was no one aware of its existence until it suddenly showed up in the deep galaxy? She started digging into old archives, searching for anything that might explain the ship's origin. She found dusty files and records from before Earth's collapse, stories about secret military projects and forgotten missions. There were rumors about a fleet of ships built in secret, meant to protect humanity in case of a great disaster. But nothing concrete. No official records. It was as if the project had been erased from history. Ilara's theory began to form. Maybe the Dreadnought was part of this secret fleet, a fleet created to survive Earth's collapse and protect human colonies scattered across the stars. But somehow the fleet and its mission had been forgotten, lost in the chaos of history. The Galactic Assembly didn't all agree with Ilara. Some leaders were skeptical. They saw the Dreadnought as a dangerous unknown, a weapon that could threaten the fragile peace of the galaxy. Others thought it was a sign that humanity's past was more complicated than anyone realized. Meanwhile, the Dreadnought moved silently through space. No one could contact it. Attempts to communicate were met with nothing but static and silence. This silence created fear. What if the ship was dangerous? What if it was a weapon that could destroy entire planets? But there was another side to this story, a side that focused on hope and curiosity. Ilara and her team believed the ship was a piece of human history, a reminder of Earth's lost past. They believed that understanding it could help humans everywhere, connect the scattered colonies, and maybe even prevent war. As the days passed, more pieces of the ship were found in other places. Private explorers and salvage crews found small parts drifting through space, all matching the strange design and metal. Each piece added to the mystery but also gave clues to the ship's story. In one remote system, an old space station received a transmission from a tiny device embedded in one fragment. The message was a set of coordinates leading to a hidden storage area on the Dreadnought itself. This discovery sparked a new mission. A team of scientists, engineers, and historians was put together to explore the ship and uncover its secrets. Among them was Ilara, chosen for her knowledge and passion for the truth. The team prepared carefully. They knew the ship was huge and ancient. They didn't know what they would find inside, whether it would be empty, dangerous, or full of answers. As they approached the Dreadnought, the tension was high. The ship was a ghost in space, silent, dark, and enormous. It looked like a giant shadow drifting between stars with no life signs or communication. When the boarding team finally entered the ship, they were surprised. The inside was dark and cold, but strangely well preserved. It looked like the crew had left in a hurry or maybe never left at all. There were empty halls, abandoned control rooms, and strange machines, humming quietly. The team found logs and records stored in the ship's memory banks. These logs told a story of people who had lived and worked on the ship centuries ago. The log spoke of a mission called the Silent Directive. It was a plan to build a fleet of ships that could survive any disaster, protect humanity, and carry its legacy across the stars. The people on the ship had been soldiers, scientists, and explorers, all united by a common goal. But something had gone wrong. The logs hinted at a great war, a betrayal, and a decision to put the ships into cryogenic sleep, frozen in time, until they were needed again. The team realized that the Dreadnought was not just a ship. It was a message from the past, a piece of history that had been waiting for the right moment to wake up. Ilara felt a deep connection to the ship and its crew. It was as if the past was reaching out to the present, asking for help and understanding. The discovery changed everything. The galaxy's view of humanity's history was no longer simple or clear. It was filled with secrets, lost missions, and ancient promises. People began to talk about the Dreadnought not just as a weapon or a threat, but as a symbol of human resilience and mystery. Ilara's work inspired others to look deeper into their past, to remember the forgotten stories and lessons. The galaxy remained on edge, waiting to see what the Dreadnought would do next. But now there was hope that the silence would not last forever, that the ship's secrets might one day bring light to the darkness. In the end, the unknown human Dreadnought was more than a mystery. It was a reminder that history can be hidden in the shadows, waiting to be found by those willing to search. And for Ilara and many others, the search was only just beginning. After the discovery of the ancient Dreadnought and the first clues found by Dr. Ilara Venn and her team, the galaxy was full of questions. But one thing everyone agreed on was that this ship was unlike anything anyone had ever seen or heard about before. It wasn't just big, it was mysterious, silent, and seemed to carry a past that was lost to time. While experts and leaders debated what to do next, a ship from the Cyrene Dominion, one of the major powers in the galaxy, detected the Dreadnought moving quietly near the edge of a star system called Iota 7. The Cyrene sent a small diplomatic vessel to try and communicate with the huge warship. The crew wanted to find out if the ship was friendly, dangerous, or something else entirely. The Cyrene ship approached carefully, keeping all sensors on full alert. They tried to send messages through every channel, greetings, questions, offers of peace. But no answer came. Suddenly, the Dreadnought responded, not with words, but with a strange signal. The message was unlike any communication anyone had ever seen. It wasn't a language. It was a strange pattern of sounds, noises, and bursts of static that quickly destroyed all communications in the area. The Cyrene ship's systems started to fail. Their radios went silent, their computers froze, and alarms blared. The crew felt as if the ship was under attack, though no weapon fire was visible. In less than 12 seconds, the Cyrene vessel was forced to retreat. Before leaving, one crew member managed to launch an escape pod. The pod was found drifting in space by a nearby cargo ship. Inside was a single survivor, a young officer unconscious but alive. When medics finally revived him, they found something disturbing. The officer was not able to speak clearly. His mind seemed broken, as if the strange signals had burned parts of his memory away. When he did speak, it was only one phrase, repeated over and over like a broken record. It wasn't built to talk. Scientists and doctors worked hard to help him recover, but his condition was puzzling. His brain had been affected in a way no one had seen before. It was almost as if the Dreadnought was alive in a strange way, and its signals were not meant for normal communication. This event sent waves of fear and confusion across the galaxy. What was this Dreadnought? Was it some kind of weapon designed to destroy any ship that tried to talk to it? Was it alive? Was it even human? Governments scrambled to respond. The Galactic Assembly held emergency meetings. Military forces prepared for possible attacks. Some feared the Dreadnought was a secret weapon from Earth, long lost but now returned to finish a deadly mission. Others worried it might be something more terrifying, a creation from beyond humanity, designed for destruction. Amid this panic, Dr. Ilara Venn continued her research quietly but carefully. She believed that fear and confusion wouldn't help. Instead, people needed to understand the ship, its origins, and its purpose. She gathered her team and went back to the data recovered from the ship's logs and fragments. The more they studied, the more they realized that the Dreadnought wasn't just a weapon or a machine. It was a story of people who had lived long ago, who had a mission, and who were caught in a moment frozen in time. Ilara's research showed that the ship's systems were unlike modern ones. The controls were built for humans but worked in a way that was unfamiliar. There were organic neural interfaces, machines that connected directly to a human mind. It meant the ship could be controlled by thought, or at least it had been designed to work with living pilots. But the ship itself was empty. No crew was found. No signs of life inside except for old silent corridors and machines humming quietly. This raised even more questions. Who were the people who built the Dreadnought? Why had they disappeared? And what had happened to their mission? The logs recovered by Ilara's team offered some answers but left many mysteries. The ship's crew had been put into cryogenic sleep, a kind of frozen hibernation, waiting for a time when they would be needed again. The logs mentioned a great war, a collapse of Earth, and a promise to protect humanity no matter what. This promise was called the Silent Directive. The Silent Directive was a plan made centuries ago when Earth was in trouble. The leaders of that time knew something terrible was coming and built a fleet of ships to carry humanity's last hope into the future. The Dreadnought was the most powerful of these ships, a fortress in space built to survive anything. But something had gone wrong. The fleet was scattered, forgotten, and the Dreadnought drifted through space, lost and silent for centuries. Ilara felt a deep sadness when she read the logs. The crew had been frozen in time, waiting for a chance to wake and fulfill their mission. But the galaxy had moved on. New governments, new alliances, and new challenges had taken their place. She wondered what the crew would think if they woke up now. Would they understand the world they found? Would they see the people who lived across the stars as friends or enemies? The mystery of the Dreadnought became a symbol of hope and fear. Some people hoped it would bring answers to humanity's past and guidance for its future. Others feared it might bring destruction and chaos. For many, the question remained, what was the true nature of this ship that wasn't built to talk? The answer seemed to lie in the silence itself. The Dreadnought didn't communicate in words or signals like other ships. It was different, mysterious, perhaps even alive in some strange way. This made the galaxy's leaders uneasy. How do you deal with something you cannot understand or control? At the same time, ordinary people watched from their homes and space stations. They told stories and shared theories. Children imagined the ship as a giant guardian watching over humanity. Some adults saw it as a ghost from the past, a reminder that history is never truly gone. In spaceports and cafes, debates took place. Was the Dreadnought a warning, a weapon, or a chance for humanity to reconnect with its forgotten roots? As the silence stretched on, new plans were made. A team of experts led by Ilara and including military officers, scientists, and diplomats prepared for the next step, to try once more to make contact. This time, they would be ready for whatever the Dreadnought might bring. They knew the risks. They knew the unknowns, but the galaxy was tired of waiting. For the first time, humans were facing a ghost from their own past. a silent giant drifting in space, holding secrets that could change everything. And as the galaxy held its breath, the story of the Dreadnought was just beginning to unfold. After months of preparation, the team led by Dr. ElevenLabs was finally ready to take the next step. The silence around the Dreadnought had lasted too long, and the galaxy's curiosity and fear had reached a breaking point. The question on everyone's mind was clear. What would happen if they tried to make contact again? Could they find a way to break through the silence, or would they only stir up more danger? The team's mission was a mix of science, exploration, and diplomacy. It was their job to board the giant ship, explore its dark corridors, and try to awaken its systems without causing harm. They didn't know what they would find, but they hoped to unlock the secrets hidden inside. As the team's small ship approached the Dreadnought, Alara looked out the window and felt a deep sense of awe. The ship was massive, longer than several city blocks, with thick armor plates shining faintly under distant stars. It seemed like a moving fortress built to survive anything. Inside the ship, the silence was overwhelming. The corridors were dark, lit only by the soft glow of emergency lights that flickered now and then. The air was stale but breathable. The crew moved carefully, their footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Alara and her team split into smaller groups to search different sections of the ship. Some went to the command center, hoping to find control rooms or data banks. Others explored living quarters and engineering decks, looking for clues about the crew who had once lived here. The team found many strange and beautiful things. Walls were covered with faded murals and carvings, images of Earth, stars, and people working together. Machines hummed quietly, powered by energy sources no one fully understood. Some devices looked like old Earth technology, while others were completely new and mysterious. Alara felt a connection to the ship growing stronger every hour. She thought about the people who had built it, about their hopes and fears and the mission they had started so long ago. But there was still no sign of the ship's crew. The cryogenic chambers where the crew should have been frozen in time were empty or damaged. Something had gone wrong long ago, and the people were gone. Then, unexpectedly, the ship's system started to respond. It began with small things, lights flickering on, computers waking from sleep, screens displaying strange symbols. The team gathered around the main control room watching in silence. A soft voice suddenly filled the room. It was not loud or aggressive. It was calm, measured, and strangely human. "Welcome, travelers," the voice said. The team froze. After months of silence, the Dreadnought was finally speaking. The voice identified itself as the ship's artificial intelligence, called Aegis, designed to assist the crew and protect the ship. Aegis explained that it had been awake for some time, but it could not contact anyone until it recognized a trusted presence. Alara felt a wave of relief and excitement. They had made contact. Aegis told them that the Dreadnought was on a mission to protect humanity's future, but it was also damaged and confused. The long silence was caused by a defense system that blocked all communication to keep the ship safe from threats. The AI asked the team to help repair critical systems and restart the ship's main functions. It warned that this process would be slow and dangerous. There were still many unknowns, and the ship's defense systems could react unpredictably. The team agreed. For weeks they worked tirelessly, fixing circuits, reactivating machines, and slowly bringing the Dreadnought back to life. During this time, they discovered more about the ship's history. The logs stored in the ship's memory told of a great threat from Earth's past, an enemy force that almost destroyed humanity. The Dreadnought was built as a last hope, designed to be unstoppable and protect human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Aegis showed the team the locations of other ships in the Forgotten Fleet. Most were lost or destroyed, but a few were still out there waiting like the Dreadnought. Alara realized this was not just a ship. It was the key to a forgotten chapter of human history, one filled with courage, sacrifice, and secrets. But there was a warning, too. The log spoke of a danger hidden deep in space, an enemy force known only as the Shadow. This enemy was responsible for the collapse of Earth and the scattering of the fleet. The Dreadnought's mission was to find and stop the Shadow before it could strike again. The team felt the weight of this responsibility. They were no longer just explorers. They were protectors of a legacy, guardians against a threat that had been asleep for centuries. As they prepared to leave the Dreadnought, they realized something else. The ship was not just a fortress. It was a home, a symbol of hope and survival. It carried the spirit of humanity's past and the promise of its future. Alara looked at her team and said, "We have a choice. We can keep this a secret or we can share it with the galaxy. But whatever we do, we must be ready. The silence has been broken, and now the story of the Dreadnought belongs to all of us." The galaxy was watching. People waited to hear what the team would say next. Would they bring hope or fear? Would the Dreadnought become a new beginning or a warning? For now, the silence had ended. The Dreadnought had spoken, and humanity's lost past had begun to return. But the future was still uncertain. The next steps would be dangerous, and the team knew they had much to learn before they could face the darkness ahead. As they prepared to leave the ship, Alara felt a deep hope. The Dreadnought was no longer just a silent giant drifting in space. It was alive with the memories of those who had built it and the dreams of those who would carry it forward. The galaxy had gone silent when the Dreadnought appeared. But now the silence was over, and the real journey was just beginning. The days after the Dreadnought's awakening were filled with a strange mixture of hope and uncertainty. Dr. Alara Venn and her team had done what many thought impossible. They had made contact with the silent giant and begun to unlock its secrets. But now, with the ship's systems slowly coming back to life, a new challenge emerged. What would the galaxy do with this powerful relic of the past? Alara stood on the observation deck of the Dreadnought, looking out at the endless stars. The vast emptiness of space made her feel small, yet connected to something much bigger. The ship wasn't just a machine, it was a symbol of humanity's strength, resilience, and mistakes. It held stories of people who had fought to protect their future. Even when everything seemed lost, her thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. The AI, Aegis, reporting the latest system updates. Life support is at 75% efficiency. Navigation controls are functioning within acceptable parameters. However, external sensors detect unusual activity in the nearby star cluster. Alara nodded, signaling the team to gather for a briefing. The tension was visible on everyone's faces. The strange activity Aegis mentioned could mean many things, another threat or perhaps an ally. What kind of activity? Alara asked. Unknown ships, silent, but moving deliberately toward the Dreadnought's position. The team exchanged worried looks. They were no strangers to danger, but nothing like this. The Dreadnought's return had clearly caught attention. Some of it was friendly curiosity, but much of it was suspicion and fear. Alara took a deep breath and turned to her team. "We've come this far," she said. "The galaxy knows we're here now. We can't hide. We need to be ready. To show that the Dreadnought is not a weapon of destruction but a protector, we must find a way to build trust." That night, Alara sat alone in the ship's library, a room filled with old books, maps, and digital records from the ship's long journey. She flipped through faded pages about Earth's history and the wars that had nearly destroyed humanity. The memories weighed heavily on her. How many people had fought and died so that this ship could still exist? How many lives were lost because they forgot their past? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock. Commander Jarek, the mission's security chief, stepped in quietly. "Alara, the fleet outside has formed a blockade. They want to communicate, but they're not responding to our signals." She sighed. "It's going to be a long day." The next morning, the Dreadnought's crew prepared for the first official contact with the unknown fleet. Alara and Commander Jarek led the team, ready to meet whatever awaited them. As their ship moved through the blockade, a voice crackled over the radio, a stern and cautious tone. "This is Admiral Thane of the Cygnus Fleet. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." Alara took a deep breath before responding. "Our explorers and scientists from the Galactic Assembly. We have awakened the ancient human Dreadnought. Our mission is to understand its history and protect the galaxy from old threats." There was a long silence. Then the Admiral's voice returned. "We've heard the stories. We've seen the destruction this ship can cause. Why should we trust you?" Alara's heart pounded. She knew trust wouldn't come easily. "Because we want peace. Because the Dreadnought is not a weapon of war. It's a reminder of what we can overcome. We want to share its knowledge, not use its power to fight." The Admiral's tone softened slightly. "We will send a delegation to board your ship. But know this. One wrong move, and we will not hesitate to destroy the Dreadnought." The meeting was tense, but it was a start. Over the next few days, Representatives from the Cygnus fleet arrived aboard the Dreadnought. They were cautious but curious. Many had heard stories about the ship's power and feared its return could mean a new war. Alara spent long hours talking with the delegation, sharing what they had learned from the ship's logs and the AI. She showed them the evidence of the silent directive, the mission to protect humanity, and the warnings about the shadow, a hidden enemy lurking in the depths of space. Slowly, the fear began to give way to understanding. But not everyone was convinced. Some members of the delegation whispered in private meetings, questioning whether the Dreadnought could ever be trusted. There were rumors of sabotage attempts and secret plans to seize the ship's weapons. Alara felt the weight of these suspicions. She knew that holding the galaxy together would require more than facts and words. It would need courage and patience. One evening, while reviewing the ship's logs, Alara discovered a new message hidden deep within the archives. It was a recording from the ship's original captain, a woman named Commander Amara Kane. Her voice was strong and calm, filled with both hope and sorrow. To those who find this message, Amara said, "Know that we built this ship not for war but for survival. We faced impossible choices and made sacrifices for the future of humanity. The silent directive was our promise, a promise to protect, to endure, and to never forget." Alara felt tears in her eyes. The captain's words echoed through the centuries, connecting past and present. She knew that the Dreadnought was more than metal and machines. It was a legacy of humanity's will to survive. But the threat of the shadow still loomed. The unknown ships near the Dreadnought were not the only danger. Strange signals detected by Aegis suggested that the shadow was moving closer, preparing to strike. The team worked around the clock, preparing the ship for whatever was coming. They repaired weapons systems, not to use them against each other, but to defend against the real enemy. Alara held a meeting with her team and the Cygnus delegation. "We must stand together," she said firmly. "The Dreadnought's power can be a shield, but only if we trust each other. The past taught us that division leads to destruction. Now more than ever, we need unity." The room was silent. Then one of the delegation leaders, a woman named Captain Lyra, spoke up. "You're right, Dr. Venn. We have doubts, but we also have a duty to protect our people. If the Dreadnought can help us, then we must find a way." With the fragile alliance formed, the combined crews prepared for battle. The Dreadnought's massive engines roared to life, and its weapon systems hummed with renewed energy. Alara watched as the stars outside grew brighter. The distant enemy was coming. The night before the battle, Alara walked through the ship's corridors. She touched the cold walls and thought about the crew who had built this place. They had faced impossible odds and chose hope over fear. She whispered a promise to them. "We won't let your sacrifice be forgotten. We will protect this galaxy no matter the cost." As the first enemy ships appeared on the horizon, the Dreadnought's silent giant form became a beacon of strength and resilience. The galaxy was no longer silent, and humanity's story was far from over. The galaxy was holding its breath. The silence that had once surrounded the ancient Dreadnought was finally broken, but a new and greater challenge had arrived. The threat of the shadow loomed like a dark cloud, and the people who had awakened the giant ship now faced the test of their courage and unity. Alara stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the large viewports. Outside, the enemy fleet was closing in, their ship small but fast, moving like a swarm. The Dreadnought's great engines pulsed steadily, ready to meet the danger. The room was tense but alive with purpose. The combined crews of the Dreadnought and the Cygnus fleet were working together, each person playing their part in the coming battle. Alara could feel the weight of history on her shoulders. This was more than a fight for survival. It was a chance to prove that humanity's past mistakes could be overcome by hope and cooperation. The first attack came without warning. Enemy ships darted forward, firing bursts of energy and missiles. The Dreadnought's defenses came alive, shimmering shields glowing as they absorbed the hits. The giant ship's weapons responded with powerful blasts, sending waves of destruction toward the attackers. Commander Jarek shouted orders, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Hold the line. Protect the Dreadnought. Don't let them break through." The crew moved like a well-oiled machine, their training and determination shining through. The enemy was fierce but unorganized, lacking the unity that now drove the defenders. Alara felt a strange calm in the storm. The Dreadnought was alive, not just in its machines but in the people who believed in its mission. The ship's AI, Aegis, worked closely with the crew, coordinating defenses and analyzing enemy movements. Suddenly, a warning flashed on the main screen. A group of enemy ships was attempting to board the Dreadnought. "We have intruders in Sector 7, a voice called out. Alara grabbed her communicator. "Security teams move to intercept. Protect the ship at all costs." The battle shifted from the vastness of space to the tight corridors inside the Dreadnought. Teams clashed in narrow halls, their footsteps echoing through the silent giant. Alara joined the security officers, moving through the dimly lit passageways. She had never imagined herself fighting in a war, but now she knew that survival depended on every person's courage. As they pushed back the intruders, Alara saw something that made her heart race. The enemy was not like any other force she had known. They were strange, part machine, part shadow, creatures created by the darkness that had destroyed Earth. She realized that the shadow was not just an enemy fleet. It was a force of destruction that could change form, adapt, and consume everything in its path. The fight was brutal and exhausting. Some of Alara's team were injured, others lost, but the defenders held their ground, driven by the hope that the Dreadnought represented. After hours of battle, the enemy began to retreat. The survivors fled into the depths of space, leaving behind wreckage and silence. The victory was hard won, but it was a beginning. As the crew tended to their wounded and repaired the ship's damage, Alara gathered with the leaders of the Cygnus fleet and the Dreadnought's team. "We survived the first wave," she said, her voice tired but strong. "But the shadow will return. We need a plan, a way to end this threat once and for all." The group worked together, combining their knowledge of the ship's history, advanced technology, and military strategy. They knew that the key to victory lay not in destruction, but in understanding the shadow. Alara suggested using the Dreadnought's ancient data to find a weakness in the enemy's power. Hours later, Aegis discovered a pattern in the shadow's movements. The creatures were linked to a central source, a dark core hidden in a nearby nebula. "This core controls the shadow," Aegis explained. "If we destroy it, the enemy fleet will collapse." The leaders agreed on a bold plan. The Dreadnought would lead a strike team directly into the nebula to destroy the core. It was dangerous, but the only way to stop the shadow. Alara volunteered to be part of the team. She felt a deep connection to the ship and its mission, and she knew that this was her chance to honor the sacrifices of the past. The strike team prepared for the journey. They gathered weapons, supplies, and their courage. Before leaving, Alara visited the ship's memorial, a quiet place filled with names and memories of those who had built the Dreadnought and fought to protect humanity. She placed her hand on a plaque, dedicated to Commander Amara Kane, the ship's original captain. "We will finish what you started," Alara whispered. "We won't let your sacrifice be in vain." The journey into the nebula was treacherous. The clouds of gas and dust made navigation difficult, and strange energy storms threatened to tear the ship apart. But the Dreadnought moved steadily forward, its engines powerful and steady. Inside the ship, the crew worked together, supporting each other through the fear and uncertainty. They shared stories, laughed when they could, and held on to hope. Alara thought about the future, the children born on distant planets, the people who would live in peace if they succeeded. As they approached the core, sensors detected the full force of the shadow's power. The dark energy pulsed like a heart, sending waves of cold through the ship. The battle inside the nebula was fierce. The Dreadnought's weapons blasted through enemy defenses, while security teams fought off shadow creatures that tried to board. Alara and her team pushed forward, reaching the core's chamber. The dark mass pulsed with energy, alive and dangerous. Alara took a deep breath and set the explosives, knowing that the ship and crew would have only moments to escape. The countdown began. With seconds to spare, the team raced back to the Dreadnought's escape pods. The ship shook violently as the core exploded, sending shockwaves through the nebula. Outside, the enemy fleet began to collapse, their connection to the core severed. The strike team watched in silence as the Shadow's ships fell apart, drifting lifeless through space. The victory was bittersweet. Many lives were lost, but the galaxy was safe for now. Alara felt a deep peace wash over her. The Dreadnought had fulfilled its mission, not just as a weapon but as a symbol of hope. Back on the ship, the crew celebrated their hard-earned success. They had faced the darkness together and emerged stronger. Elara looked out at the stars, thinking about the future. The galaxy was no longer silent. The story of the Dreadnought had brought people together, reminding them of their shared history and the power of unity. She knew that challenges would come again, but humanity was ready, because no matter how dark the night, there was always a light shining in the distance, and that light was the promise of a new beginning.